Hi there, future teacher. Welcome to your study guide for the GACE 731, Testlet 503, Foundations and Professional Knowledge in Special Education. This is part of Georgia's Special Education Adapted Curriculum P through 12 certification exam. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a comprehensive review of the legal foundations, ethical principles, and human development knowledge you need to pass. We'll cover philosophical and legal foundations of special education and human development with disability implications. Let's get into it. Quick note before we begin. We put together a free study guide workbook that goes along with this video. It has all the key terms, comparison tables, practice questions, and space for your own notes. Grab your free copy from the link in the description below. This video is presented by TeacherPreps.com. Our platform includes a complete study guide for every objective on the GACE 731, full-length timed practice tests that mirror the real exam, and vocabulary exercises. It's free to get started. Alright, that was our plug. For the rest of this video, it's go time. Grab your pen and paper, and let's begin. First, let's understand Testlet 503. This testlet has 40 selected response questions, and you'll have 60 minutes to complete it. It accounts for 40% of your total GACE 731 score, making it the highest-weighted testlet on this exam. There are 4 objectives. Objective 1 covers philosophical, professional, and legal foundations. Objective 2 covers human development and disability implications. Objective 3 is collaborative partnerships with stakeholders. And Objective 4 is referral, eligibility, and program planning. In this video, we're going to deep dive into Objectives 1 and 2. Let's start with Objective 1, philosophical, professional, and legal foundations. This objective tests your knowledge of the core principles, laws, and ethical standards that govern special education in the United States. For the adapted curriculum exam specifically, you need to understand how these foundations apply to students with the most significant disabilities. This is foundational knowledge that every Georgia special education teacher must master. Let's start with the key concepts and principles you need to know. Specially designed instruction, or SDI, is the cornerstone of special education. SDI means adapting the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction to address the unique needs of a child with a disability. For the adapted curriculum population, SDI often includes significant modifications to the curriculum, specialized teaching strategies, and alternative ways for students to demonstrate learning. Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, is a framework that provides multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression. UDL is proactive, meaning you design instruction from the start to be accessible to all learners rather than retrofitting accommodations afterward. The Learning Strategies approach teaches students specific techniques for acquiring, storing, and using information independently. For students on the adapted curriculum, this might include visual supports, task analysis steps, or self-monitoring checklists. Inclusive practices refer to educating students with disabilities alongside their non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate with the supports they need to succeed. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, is the cornerstone federal law you must know inside and out. IDEA guarantees 6 core principles. First, free appropriate public education, or FAPE, meaning every eligible child receives special education and related services at no cost to the family, designed to meet their unique needs. Second, least restrictive environment, or LRE, meaning students with disabilities are educated with non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate. For the adapted curriculum population, LRE decisions require careful consideration because these students often need extensive supports. Third, non-discriminatory evaluation, meaning a full, individualized, culturally fair assessment before any eligibility or placement decision. Fourth, the Individualized Education Program, or IEP, a legally binding document that details the child's present levels, annual goals, services, and accommodations. Fifth, parent participation, meaning parents are equal members of the IEP team. Sixth, procedural safeguards, including prior written notice, informed consent, and the right to due process hearings. Additionally, IDEA includes Child Find, the mandate requiring states to identify, locate, and evaluate all children with suspected disabilities and the zero reject principle, meaning no child can be denied education regardless of disability severity. Beyond IDEA, you need to know additional federal laws. Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act requires accommodations for individuals with disabilities in any program receiving federal funds. Unlike IDEA, Section 504 uses a broader definition of disability. A student may qualify for a 504 plan even if they don't meet IDEA eligibility. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, prohibits discrimination based on disability in all areas of public life, including schools, employment, and transportation. FERPA, the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, protects the confidentiality of student records. Student disability information may only be shared with authorized personnel who have a legitimate educational need to know. COPPA, the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, governs the collection of personal information from children under 13 online. For the adapted curriculum population, the IEP must also include a transition plan beginning no later than age 16, addressing post-secondary goals for education, employment, and independent living. You must understand the development process and components of both the IEP and the IFSP. The IEP is for school-age children ages 3 through 21 and includes present levels of academic achievement and functional performance, measurable annual goals, a description of special education services and related services, accommodations and modifications, the extent of participation with non-disabled peers, and transition services beginning at age 16. The IFSP, or Individualized Family Service Plan, is for infants and toddlers from birth through age 2 under IDEA Part C. The IFSP is family-centered and includes present levels of development, family concerns and priorities, measurable outcomes, natural environment considerations, and a transition plan for moving to preschool services at age 3. For the adapted curriculum population, IEP goals often focus heavily on functional skills, communication, daily living, and community participation alongside academic goals aligned to extended content standards. Professional ethics and responsibilities are critical for this objective. The Professional Code of Ethics for Special Educators emphasizes maintaining high expectations for all students with disabilities, using evidence-based practices, engaging in continuous professional development, and advocating for the rights and needs of students. Confidentiality is a legal and ethical obligation. Student records and disability information are shared only with authorized personnel on a need-to-know basis in appropriate confidential settings. When working with students on the adapted curriculum, you must also model safe, legal, and ethical uses of technology and advocate for the student's access to assistive technology and communication systems. On your exam, ethics questions often present a scenario and ask which response best aligns with professional standards and legal requirements. Let's try a practice question for Objective 1. An IEP team for a student with significant cognitive disabilities is discussing placement options. The student currently spends the entire school day in a self-contained classroom. A parent requests that the student be included in the general education classroom for specials such as art and music. Which response best aligns with IDEA's principles? Option A. Deny the request because the student's disability is too severe for general education settings. Option B. Grant the request only if the general education teacher agrees to accept the student. Option C. Discuss supports and accommodations that would enable the student to participate meaningfully in general education settings. Option D. Suggest the parent observe the self-contained classroom to understand why it's the best placement. The correct answer is C. Discuss supports and accommodations that would enable the student to participate meaningfully in general education settings. IDEA's LRE principle requires that students with disabilities be educated with non-disabled peers to the maximum extent appropriate. Before restricting placement, the IEP team must consider what supplementary aids and services could enable success in the general education environment. Option A violates LRE by dismissing the possibility without consideration. Option B makes inclusion contingent on teacher agreement rather than student rights. And Option D deflects the discussion rather than addressing the request directly. The correct approach is always to discuss how to make inclusion work with appropriate supports. Now let's move into Objective 2. human development, and disability implications. This objective tests your understanding of how children develop across multiple domains, the causes and characteristics of disabilities, and how disabilities affect students and their families. For the adapted curriculum population, this knowledge is critical because your students have the most significant cognitive, physical, and communication needs. You need to understand typical and atypical development across 6 domains from birth through adolescence. The adaptive domain covers daily living skills like feeding, dressing, and personal hygiene. The cognitive domain includes thinking, reasoning, problem-solving, and memory development. The social-emotional domain covers attachment, self-regulation, peer relationships, and emotional understanding. The sensorimotor domain involves the integration of sensory input with motor output for coordinated movement. The physical domain covers gross and fine motor development milestones. And the communication domain includes receptive language, expressive language, and pragmatic language development. For each domain, you should know what typical development looks like at different ages so you can identify when a student's development is atypical. On the exam, questions may present a developmental milestone and ask whether it's age-appropriate or represents a concern. You must understand the key causes of disabilities. Genetic causes include chromosomal conditions like Down syndrome, which is caused by an extra copy of chromosome 21 and results in intellectual disability with characteristic physical features. Fragile X syndrome is the most common inherited cause of intellectual disability and is associated with social anxiety and attention difficulties. Angelman syndrome causes severe intellectual disability with limited speech and a characteristic happy demeanor. Prader-Willi syndrome involves intellectual disability, behavioral challenges, and insatiable appetite. Environmental and biological causes include fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, which result from prenatal alcohol exposure and can cause intellectual disability, behavioral issues, and characteristic facial features. Perinatal complications such as oxygen deprivation during birth can cause cerebral palsy and intellectual disability. Traumatic brain injury from external physical force can result in total or partial functional disability. Environmental toxins like lead exposure can cause developmental delays and cognitive impairment. Understanding these causes helps you anticipate the patterns of strength and need that different students will present. A critical concept for Objective 2 is how developmental domains are interconnected. A delay or disability in one domain almost always affects other domains. For example, a communication deficit can lead to behavioral challenges because the student cannot express needs verbally. A motor impairment can limit cognitive development if the student cannot explore and manipulate their environment. A sensory processing disorder can affect social-emotional development if the student avoids social situations due to sensory overload. Auditory processing difficulties affect language development and academic learning because the student struggles to process spoken instructions. Visual processing challenges affect reading, spatial awareness, and navigation of the physical environment. Executive functioning deficits affect planning, organization, working memory, and impulse control across all domains. On the exam, look for questions that ask you to identify how a deficit in one area creates a cascade effect across other areas of functioning. The adapted curriculum population has a profound impact on families. You need to understand the roles of parents as primary caregivers and informal teachers. Parents provide the continuity of care and routine that supports skill generalization across environments. Factors in the home and community that influence development include socioeconomic status, cultural beliefs about disability, access to healthcare and therapy services, sibling relationships, and family stress levels. The influence of stress and trauma on development is significant. Children who experience adverse childhood experiences may show developmental delays that mimic or compound disability effects. Protective factors include supportive relationships, stable routines, and access to community resources. Resilience is built through positive, consistent interactions with caregivers and educators. Family dynamics are complex. A child's disability affects every family member differently. Siblings may experience jealousy, resentment, or become exceptionally empathetic caregivers. The special education teacher's role includes supporting the entire family system. Here's a practice question for Objective 2. A 5-year-old student with a genetic condition causing significant intellectual disability also demonstrates delays in communication, motor skills, and adaptive behavior. The IEP team should recognize that this pattern reflects which developmental principle? Option A. Developmental delays are always limited to the primary area of disability. Option B. Domains of development are interconnected, and a deficit in one area often impacts multiple other domains. Option C. Genetic conditions only affect cognitive development and not other functional areas. Option D. Communication delays are unrelated to intellectual disability and should be assessed separately. The correct answer is B. Domains of development are interconnected, and a deficit in one area often impacts multiple other domains. This is a core principle of developmental theory. Intellectual disability affects cognitive processing, which in turn affects communication development, motor planning, and the acquisition of adaptive skills. The IEP team must address all areas of need, not just the primary eligibility category. Option A is incorrect because delays typically span multiple domains. Option C is incorrect because genetic conditions affect many functional areas. And option D is incorrect because communication and cognitive development are deeply interconnected. Great work covering the first two objectives of GACE 731 Testlet 503. But here's the thing. What we just covered, legal foundations in human development, is only half of this testlet. You still need to master Objective 3, collaborative partnerships with stakeholders, which covers working with related service providers, general education teachers, families, and external agencies. And Objective 4, referral, eligibility, and program planning, which covers the RTI and MTSS framework, comprehensive evaluation, IEP development, and the continuum of placement options. Without those two objectives, you're walking into test day with half the preparation you need for this testlet, which is worth 40% of your total score. The complete study guide covering all 4 objectives, plus full-length timed practice tests, is available right now at TeacherPreps.com. Link in the description. Good luck, future teacher.